welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. So it's the week after build, and so as you might imagine, not loads and loads of announcements out this week. I think if you are a product group inside Microsoft and you had something to announce, you tried to get it into the build schedule. So that gives us a week just to kind of ruminate on some of the things that came out of build. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we're going to need more than a week to do that. So this week, I've kind of focused a little bit on Copilot and Microsoft Graph as being the two big areas of innovation that developers really need to be paying attention to right now. So the first is around Copilot, and kind of more specifically Copilot for Microsoft 365, because just saying Copilot doesn't really help. It's becoming almost like saying AI now. So I'm going to try really hard when I'm talking about Copilot in the next few minutes, I mean Copilot for Microsoft 365. And there were lots of different announcements for developers at Build this year concerning this type of Copilot. Lots of things were announced, lots of different ways to extend what's in Copilot for Microsoft 365, and also how to extend kind of just on the edges of Copilot for 365, but still make it feel like it's part of 365. So one of the challenges, I think, for people is when something like build happens, it's a chance for Microsoft to present the current state of everything they're doing and what they're thinking. And those two things kind of get joined together to give a kind of environment map, if you like, of what's happening. And so what that means is we get announcements we get a roll up of the last few months of things, or up to sort of 6 months of things that have previously been announced or in preview. We get some new announcements of things that are available, and then we get some forward looking announcements of things that are coming, and all those things get wrapped together into a package and sort of presented as here are all the ways. And so if you're a developer today picking up their keyboard to be like, right, I'm going to go and build things on Copilot for Microsoft 365, it's a little tricky to know where to land, So what I've tried to do in a blog post I put out this week was really just go through all the announcements and then kind of tell you whether they were previously announced by another name, previously announced same name, whether they're in preview, whether they're in private preview, meaning you can't get to them yet, but they're coming soon, whether they are coming soon, or whether they're available today. So that's what I've tried to do in this blog post. There's an all-up diagram that came from one of the sessions, which I think is quite useful. I started off with, look, before we went into build, before last week happened, what did we already have? What was the state of play? So we already had graph connectors. We already had message extension-based Copilot plugins. We already had Teams AI library-based bots. So we had all those things already going into build. So then once you understand that, then you can look at the announcements and sort of place them in terms of like what that means. So for instance, new capabilities for plugins. So if I come back up to plugins here, these message extension-based plugins allowed you to build search command-based plugins. Soon, you're going to be able to do action-based ones as well, and you're going to be able to create plugins using Open API specifications. So both those things are not quite things you can do today, apart from in private preview, which I don't really count. So just be aware, those were things that were announced that are coming soon, but are not here today. There's a whole thing Microsoft called declarative copilots, which is a new concept. So I go into it a little bit of detail. And if you wanted to really dig into something in build for developers this year, I would go and look into declarative copilots because it's a new concept. It's a new idea. If you saw that thing in the keynote where they had a SharePoint folder and they created a bot from the SharePoint folder that was very scoped, they call it a Copilot, created a Copilot from the SharePoint folder. So it was something you could talk to and interact with, but it was very scoped to the contents of that SharePoint folder. I think that's the same thing as this. So this is a way for developers to do the same thing. Again, in private preview, not something you can do today, but it's definitely worth looking into. And then Custom Copilot is kind of a rebranding a little bit. It's the name that was previously called the Teams AI library. And the idea here is that the bots you build for the Teams AI library won't just be things that you can access in Teams. You'll be able to access them across the whole of the Copilot ecosystem, or certainly the Copilot in Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So that's kind of interesting. Again, coming soon, but if you've got ideas for things you could where you could make use of this, there's nothing to stop you using the Teams AI library because that's already out and available today. It's, you know, you could use that. So you could start building your bot knowing that at some point soon they're going to allow you to like give that to anyone using Copilot for 365. There's also this new idea of Copilot handoff, which I thought was a feature, but reading more and more into it, it kind of isn't. It's just the idea that you could have a plugin and a bot, and you could have a button in the plugin that calls the bot, because you can do a deep link to a bot. But if you want to do true handoff, where you sort of begin a conversation in one place and continue in another, you can, but you've got to build that in yourself. So there's a code sample and a page. If you go and look for Copilot handoff, it's kind of a pattern. So it kind of describes the pattern, gives you some examples, but that's something you could build into your own code if you wanted to. All right. Again, this is just extensibility for Copilot for Microsoft 365. Didn't cover Microsoft Copilot Studio, where they're doing loads of cool stuff also. I will try and get to it, maybe. We'll see. But yeah, so that's kind of interesting. Yeah, I thought that was a useful blog post to try and pull together. If only for me, it really helped me to understand like what are all these things, what is new, what is coming soon, what is available today. And so putting it all together helped me, and so hopefully it can help you. And finally, the other thing I want to leave you with is a blog post that did come out in the week, which was like a roll-up blog post for what's new for Microsoft Graph. And actually, I would extend this. I mean, yes, it is just about Microsoft Graph, kind of, but actually, because Microsoft Graph spans so many different things, this is build a different slant on what is new for developers in build 2024. So I'm not going to go through all of these because we haven't got time, but some of this stuff we've already talked about: Copilot extensions, connectors, and again, some of this is like not entirely new. So things like connectors in Copilot Studio might be new. Sorry. So it's not just connectors. You know, yeah, it's some of this wording you just got to like read with your marketing hat on, because like taking things that have previously been announced and kind of molding them slightly, fine, whatever. I mean, that's the point of build. Build is essentially like a big marketing exercise for developers as well as a knowledge share thing. So that's fine. Building extensions we've talked about. Simplified setup for graph connectors is cool. And then there's a bunch of other little things here as well. There's some updates to the Teams API. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago with SMS notification and reminder API. So this is what I mean. Like, not all this stuff is new. This is like a roll-up of announcements. Okay, so go through this blog post because you might have missed something. The SharePoint Pages API is now GA. Some changes to OpenAI, updates, blah, 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 blah. Lots of things in here. Which I'm not going to go through, mostly because we haven't got time, but also some of them you'll have heard before. All right, I think that's everything I want to tell you about. Again, kind of like I say, kind of a quiet one, but we're still absorbing that information. We're still trying to like go through and pour through all the build stuff and just pull out what it means. Busy week coming up. Hoping to get out a video later today, which I think you'll find really interesting. And then a blog post tomorrow again on something that I know you'll find really interesting. So 2 big things coming this week. And then we'll see what the rest of the week brings. Right, whatever it is you're doing today, I hope you have a great one. And I will speak to you again next time.